Welcome, guys. I'm TJ. Welcome to New Zealand Mysteries. I'm glad to have you here. We are a community wanting to bring awareness to missing persons and unsolved murders, mainly from New Zealand, but we do feature and we will feature some stories from around the world as well. I apologise for the audio. It is what it is. I've got to work with what I've got. In the description box below, you can find links to our Facebook page and our website. In there, you'll also find a link to our podcast if you prefer to listen that way. If you would like to support the channel, it would be greatly appreciated. I'm just a one-woman band, and I can't do this alone. So any help would be greatly appreciated. Links are down below if you want to do that and have a look at that. You will also find links to all the sources that I've used in case you want to do some investigating of your own. Remember to hit the like button or dislike button if you prefer. If you like the content, please subscribe and share these stories, whether it's sharing this episode, sharing the podcast or the Facebook page. I believe that a lot of the cases I feature are able to be solved. They just need to be seen or heard by the right person or the right people with the right information. So this episode, we are going to look at the unsolved murder of 13-year-old Tracey Ann Patient. I'll just quickly give my disclaimer. I genuinely don't mean any disrespect or hurt to anyone, any family members or people impacted by these stories. It is all just information that is available online. My aim is to raise awareness of these cases. I don't want these victim stories forgotten. They deserve to be heard. So let's get into the story. On a warm summer's evening on January the 29th, 1976, Tracey Ann Patient, a 13-year-old girl, would disappear. She would be found less than 12 hours later, strangled to death and her body dumped by the side of the road. Tracey and her family had only moved to New Zealand just 2 years earlier from England. Tracey had been at a mate's house on that evening, 29th of January. The friend was a schoolmate from Henderson High in Auckland. The friend recalled spending the evening gossiping about boys, as young girls do, and remembers Tracey showing her a signet ring that she had recently been given by her boyfriend. She also remembers Tracey phoning home and talking to her mum and saying, "I'll be home in half an hour, mum." Sometime around 9 p.m. that evening, both girls left her friend's house in Chilcot Road, Henderson, and Chilcot Road is just up here. Tracey was due home at her parents' house in Dalwood Ave at 9:30 p.m. and Dalwood Ave is down the bottom here. They walked together about halfway, both of them, saying their goodbyes and parting ways at the corner of Great North Road and Edmonton Road. So, as you can see, Great North Road is this one here, and Edmonton Road is this one here. So they parted just around here. Tracey set off up Great North Road heading home, but Tracey never made it home. The last known sighting of Tracey was outside number 295 Great North Road by a couple walking their dog. And 295 Great North Road is just about here. Later that evening, when Tracey didn't return home, Tracey's father and her sister went out and looked for her. They looked obviously up and down Great North Road, and they even apparently went into the city a little bit, but there was no trace of her anywhere at all. The following morning, a man walking his dog found Tracey's body dumped in a bush area on Scenic Drive, on the fringe of the Waitakere Ranges. The coroner ruled her death was due to homicide by strangulation by a ligature. Tracey had been strangled with her own stockings, wound tight with a twig at the back of her neck. A large-scale investigation was launched. A homicide team of about 30 police set up temporary headquarters in a local scout hall. Police looked at hundreds of persons of interest over the months and exhausted numerous lines of inquiries. In March 1976, so just a few months later, an anonymous woman called Youthline, and Youthline's sort of a telephone service for young people to ring and get some support. She said she saw a blonde girl, thought to be Tracy, on Great North Road with a man in a brown suit. Both got into a brown car which drove off just after 9:30 p.m, but unfortunately, despite public appeals, that woman caller was never found. So if you're that woman caller, you need to ring back. There were many leads pursued over the years. The police appealed for sightings of any cars acting suspiciously in the area, and a reward of $10,000 was offered. A description and identical picture were actually published, and the man was found though, and he was later cleared. 22 months later, so nearly 2 years, after Tracy's murder in November 1978, police received a phone call from an anonymous person who told the police that a signet ring belonging to Tracy could be found in a rubbish bin outside a chemist in Avondale. The caller gave the call taker the number 126040 and said he would call back later, but the guy never called back. Officers went to that rubbish bin and they did find a signet ring inside, and it was identified by Tracy's boyfriend as the ring he had given her, and police knew that Tracy was wearing that ring when she disappeared. In 2004, on June the 2nd, police released a statement, and this was following a program airing the night before called Cold Case by the Holmes TV show. Waitakere police were inundated with phone calls, voice and emails about Tracy's case after the show, and they said that they were going to have to set up a small inquiry team to deal with it all. That was said by Officer in Charge, Detective Sergeant Murray Free. He said, "It's too early to comment on any potential new leads at this stage. We have to first collate the information, compare it against the original file, and then assess if we have anything new." However, no suspect was named and no one was charged following the investigation. 2 years later, in 2006, on January the 10th, another program did an episode about the case. It was called Sensing Murder, and it's a program in which psychics investigate the case. That was aired, but there was nothing coming from it. Didn't move the case along at all. Then nothing happened till 2010, on February the 1st. Police revealed that they had interviewed a man in connection with the case. Detective Senior Sergeant Stan Brown, head of the Henderson CIB, said police had questioned the man, but he would not comment on whether the man was being treated as a suspect. Again, moving a few years ahead, January 2016, on the eve of the 40th anniversary of Tracy's disappearance, police revealed that since the November of that year, a team of 8 investigators based at the Waitakere police station had actually been working full-time on the Tracey Patient case. Detectives followed new leads and appealed for anyone with information on the case to call police. Detectives made inquiries and spoke with over 200 people about the case, even as far away as Australia. At the time, Detective Inspector John Sutton from the Waitemata Police said, "Despite 40 years having passed, someone out there knows who did this. To this day, we still have people who ring us with information, and I'm pleased to say we are following new leads." He continues, "For 40 years, the Patient family have lived with the absolute trauma of what happened to their daughter and sister. They have never known who took Tracy from them or why. It is still incredibly fresh to them, as if she was stolen from them only yesterday." He continues, "The West Auckland community remember this well. It was horrific. A 13-year-old girl with her whole life ahead of her, just minutes away from home, and brutally murdered. Someone out there knows who did this, and we are as determined to solve it now as we were back then," he said. To coincide with the 40-year anniversary of Tracy's death, an 8-minute video was released to the public. speaking on camera for the first time ever, Tracy's older sister Debbie had filmed an interview with police to help with the public appeal.
She was fun. She was a really, really fun girl, lovely girl. We were close, yeah, because there was just like the 2 years between us, so we were very close.
On the 29th of January 1976, Tracey Patient was walking home from her friend's house in Chilcot Road. She was heading back to her parents' place in Henderson. It was only a very short walk.
I can remember it clearly. I can remember coming back. She wasn't home. She was about half hour later, I think, than she was supposed to have been. And Dad and I went out in the car, just went around Henderson in the town and just looking around and couldn't find her.
It was early 1976. The Patient family had moved out from England 2 years earlier. Tracy was only 13. She had a younger sister, Denise, and an older sister, Debbie.
We just used to hang out, just go around friends, or quite often have friends around to our house as well, or all of us go down to Glendine, go to the milk bar, do you call it? Like, you know, we get your milkshakes and stuff like that. Go to the cinema. On Saturdays, get the bus into the city.
It was summertime, it was the school holidays, it was a Thursday evening and the weather was fine. There was a large concert on at Western Springs with the international band the Doobie Brothers were playing, so a large number of people had gone to Western Springs and they were heading back throughout the evening. There were people out walking their dogs. It was a pleasant evening, so there were a lot of people around.
We had a bit of a problem getting home on time, so we were grounded. And I really wanted to go to the Doobie Brothers concert, and I nagged at Mum. And in the end, she'd sort of said, they said, okay, you can go. And obviously couldn't then sort of turn Tracy down if she wanted to do something. She wanted to go to her friend Lynette's. So Mum said she could go. So basically that evening, and that's the last time I saw her, we were walking up the road, and that was it.
Tracy never made it home. The following morning, her body was found dumped in the bush up in the Waitakaris. She'd been strangled with a stocking and her body discarded in the bush. She's only 13.
And then the next day in the morning, can't remember what time it was, Mum and Denise and myself were sitting in the living room. Denise was on my lap. And Dad came home. You could see he was really upset. And Denise said, when's Tracy coming home? And my dad said, she's not. What do you mean she's not? And he said, someone killed her. And just burst into tears. And I can just remember my sister, you know, she was only sort of 8, just going, no. And she says she remembers that me taking her into the bedroom. I don't really remember much after that, to be honest.
There was an inquiry base set up at the old Scout Hall there in the middle of Henderson, and they carried out an extensive number of inquiries. People in the community who were known to police, and also lots of nominations from the public of people they suspected could be involved. Despite the police looking at over 850 suspects in the last 40 years, the offender has never been identified. This person has never been brought to account for this horrendous crime.
That's one of, well, a regret of my life, obviously, that I nagged my mum to go to this blinking concert. But when she said bye, I never, because she was walking up the road slightly behind me, and I never turned around. I just went, oh, okay, bye, see you later, and went off. And I just so regret not turning around. You know, you looking back, how are you supposed to know that's the last time you're going to see somebody?
Tracy's family feel like this only just happened yesterday. Despite 40 years passing, for them it is very real. It was their daughter, their sister, and for her life to end like that, to be snatched away from them. As I say, it still affects them to this day as if it only occurred yesterday.
Our driveway, you went up a kind of almost like a slope to get to the driveway, and I just keep looking, and I remember saying to someone, I just keep thinking, because she was a bit of a practical joker, and I like, she's going to just come walking up and go, I fooled you, you know, it's a joke. And then at night time, you go to sleep, you wake up in the morning, and it's like about 2 seconds before you realise, and it's like, oh, you know, you think you've had a dream or something. Just awful, so hard to cope with. So hard to cope with.
I'm pleased to say that the investigation into Tracy's death has been resumed full time. We have had 8 police staff working on this since mid-November. We're following up on new information and also reviewing information from the original inquiry to try and identify this offender. We would love to be able to solve this case, to catch Tracy's killer, to let the family, after all these years, know what happened to their little girl.
On Sunday, Mum and Dad have asked if I will go and lay some flowers. Where Tracy was found. I've never been there. I know in this day and age that's what people do if someone dies of an accident. You sort of put flowers there and that, but in those days you just didn't do it. And to be honest, I don't think I could have done. But that's what I'm going to do. What they did was wrong, it was very wrong. They took a child's life. However many years it's been, this person's had a life, he's probably got a family, you know, he's running around happy as Larry, he's got off with murder.
Time can't diminish or minimise this terrible crime. Tracy was only 13 years old, she would have been 53 now. She never got to be a mother, a wife, and what happened to her was absolutely horrendous.
I'd love to be able to say, like they do, I forgive you. I don't forgive that person at all. I hope that person's had an awful, awful life. I really do. Sorry. I hope they've thought about it, if not every day. I hope it's been on their mind. And I would love for them to give themselves up.
Someone out there knows who was responsible for this. Loyalties change over time, and we want that key information to come through to us. We've got an 0800 number. It's 0800 000 111. We want people to phone us.
My younger sister Denise, who was 8 when Tracy was killed, has written something here that I'd like to read out to you, if that's okay. The saddest thing for me is that I can't remember my sister. Whether that was due to my age when it happened or my memory blocking out the part in New Zealand, I don't know. And to put that down on paper really hurts because I feel so guilty that I can't remember. I do have memories of the night that she went missing and my dad coming in crying, telling us what had happened. Since it happened, I've always been frightened of the dark. I vaguely remember going out one time in the dark with my family after it happened and shaking terribly. Over the years, I've had terrible nightmares of someone trying to get me and always waking up just as they catch me. Because of what's happened to our family and how it's affected me, I've tried not to be really overprotective of my children, and I'm still fighting a battle with myself when they go out, especially at night time. And I hope, as we all do, that something comes of it. Regards, Denise Marjoram.
The person responsible for this crime should come forward and speak to the police. It's been 40 years. It was a horrendous crime. I don't know how they can live with themselves. They need to come forward and get this off their chest. They need to call the police, come into the station, phone the number, make contact with us. That person should come forward.
So that can be found on the page of the NZ Herald, and I will also have a link to it in the description box below. That made me really sad. It's a really sad video, and it just reaffirms why I do this, because I just can't let these families, they're just grieving so much and they've lost so much. It's heart-wrenching. Moving on. Since the announcement that the case had been reopened, police said they had received almost 100 calls from the public. Detective Inspector John Sutton says, "We've heard from people who have never called police before and have told us that they've thought about the case for the past 40 years. We have quite a number of suspect nominations and pieces of information from people." He says, people had also come forward with various theories about what the number 126040 means. At one stage, a pensioner named Gary Ross claimed he saw a man leading a young girl along by the elbow the night 13-year-old Tracy disappeared, more than 40 years ago. He told reporters that he made numerous calls to the police from the day after Tracy's disappearance and several times up until 2011, but gave up as he felt ignored by the police. He told stuff.co.nz he remembers the evening clearly. It was a Thursday and he and a friend were in Henderson. Ross and his mate, who passed away years ago, were leaning against a parked car on the side of Great North Road. Ross says, while we were chatting, I saw a young girl being hustled along the road by a middle-aged to elderly gentleman wearing a hat. He was holding her by the elbow. He said she wasn't panicking at all, but she looked directly at us as she passed. He says, I think that was her that was being escorted away. I'm quite sure it was her that was being escorted away by this guy. Absolutely, I was 3 or 4 metres away from them. He goes on, I've seen her photographs in the newspapers and I'm quite sure that it was her. And it was about 9:30 at night and Henderson was virtually deserted. Ross said that the next day, when he heard on the radio that Tracy had disappeared from Henderson, he rang the police. He said the person he spoke to took down his details and said that they would be in touch, but nobody rang him back. He said he tried to pass on the information several more times over the years, most recently in 2011 when he saw that Detective Sergeant Murray Free was now in charge of the case. As they chatted, Ross figured out that he used to know one of Free's uncles through cricket, so with that in mind he thought he'd have more luck getting heard this time, but apparently not. He says, I outlined what I'd seen and he told me he'd come and see me. I'm still waiting. Police have talked to Ross, I know that, but they seemed, from what I've read, deemed his account unreliable at the time or not worth listening to or acting on, I don't know. Moving ahead to 2016, on the 25th of October, Detective Inspector John Sutton said they were winding down the investigation. The investigation has been progressed, but unfortunately it has not resulted in anyone being arrested and charged with Tracy's murder. Police had spoken to Tracy's family, he said. Whilst they share our disappointment, they are appreciative of our efforts. He goes on, they have also been comforted at the ongoing public assistance with Tracy's case and the fact that she has not been forgotten by hundreds of people in the West Auckland community. The case would remain open, but police would no longer actively investigate it unless they received new information. Tracy's sister talked to a reporter after the police announced that they were winding down the investigation. She says she hopes the killer has had a horrible life. Tracy's sister Debbie told News Hub that the family was disappointed police were not able to arrest anyone. She said, we would love the investigation to continue. Obviously we would. We would love this person to be brought to justice, but we fully understand that the police can't continue to commit the resources to Tracy's case after all this time. So here we are in 2020, and the heinous murder of a bright young 13-year-old girl with her whole life ahead of her still goes unsolved, and her family are still heartbroken. The family flew back home to Britain with Tracy's repatriated body soon after the murder, distraught obviously, and Tracy was buried in England. Someone or someone's people have this on their conscience, and we can only hope that they reach a point where they can't live with this anymore. I hope that one day Tracy's family gets the answers that they deserve. I know in 2018 I received a message from Tracy's sister Debbie on my website thanking me for keeping Tracy's story out there. So we need to help Debbie, we need to help this family. A couple of questions to think about, I guess. Were you on Great North Road that night around 9:30 p.m? Or were you on Scenic Drive that night or into the early hours of morning? Were you the anonymous woman caller who called Youthline in March 1976? Also, what does that number mean? It seems really strange that someone would ring up and give that number. So, if you know anything about that. If you know anything, even the littlest thing you might not think is important, but it could be, contact your local police station, or you can call Crimestoppers anonymously on 0800 555 111, or visit them online at crimestoppers-nz.org. Alternatively, just open Google, type in Crimestoppers, and the information will come up. It's about time something happened for this family. It's too long. Tracy deserves to be settled. The family deserves some closure. Thank you for listening and sharing this story with me, and please join me next time. Thanks very much.